Tensions escalating this morning as North Korea threatens to turn the U.S. to, quote, ashes.
President Trump calling the country a menace while convincing China to help deal with the ruthless dictator.
Griff Jenkins is live for us in Washington, D.C. with those latest developments this morning. Griff, good to see you.
Hey, Heather and Abby, it's good to see you. Here's a dire threat from North Korean state media to start your weekend off, escalating tensions even further. The regime warning in an editorial of a, quote, super mighty preemptive strike that will completely and immediately wipe out not only imperialist invasion forces in South Korea and its surrounding areas, but the U.S. mainland and reduce them to ashes. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, traveling in Israel, responding to the latest provocation just moments ago.
Their word has not proven honest. It's been provocative. They've not lived up to any statements they've made in the past. I would just take their words at the same value we've always given them, as we've learned not to trust them.
This comes as President Trump praises China for putting economic and political pressure on North Korea amidst imminent concerns of more nuke tests, calling the rogue nation a, quote, menace, and reassuring that the situation is under control.
As far as North Korea is concerned, we are in very good shape. We're building our military rapidly. A lot of things have happened over the last short period of time. I've been here for approximately 91 days. We're doing a lot of work. We're in very good position.
But some question China's commitment. A senior U.S. defense official telling Fox News that they have seen a greater amount of military activity in China, but admits it's not exactly clear what it means. Meanwhile, the USS Carl Vinson arrives at the Sea of Japan next week, and reports are that the U.S. has deployed its nuke-sniffing aircraft to the peninsula as the world waits for what is likely North Korea's 6th nuclear test. So we wait.
Yeah, a busy weekend ahead, I am sure.
Thank you, Griff.
Thank you, Griff.
Move overseas right now. Conflicting reports today out of Moscow about whether or not it's building up defenses near the border with North Korea. That, as Fox News is learning, for the 4th night in a row, Russian bombers or spy planes buzz by Alaskan airspace. Let's start on the North Korean matter now. This video of heavy Russian weaponry has been making the rounds on social media throughout the week. You'll see in a moment here. There have also been reports that Russia is sending troops to bolster the border with North Korea. But the AP cites a Russian defense official who says the movement was all pre-planned. There's also a Russian news agency quoting a military spokesman for the area that the military hardware was on its way back from drills in other places. Still, a spokesman for the Kremlin reportedly did not deny the troop movement to North Korea when this was said.
The issue of deployment and redeployment of troops inside the country does not fall into the category of public affairs. Any country in the process of building its own security reacts to change in the international situation.
In other words, none of your business. Keep in mind, this all comes after we learned the Syrian government moved nearly all of its operational aircraft to a Russian airbase. Officials say it's for protection in case of new U.S. missile strikes there. Wow. Also today, more Russian meddling off the American coastline. U.S. officials telling us here at Fox that on Wednesday night, 2 Russian spy planes flew near the Aleutian Islands, which extend off the southwestern part of Alaska's mainland and into the Bering Sea. Then last night, officials say 2 long-range and nuclear-capable bombers flew by Alaska and the Canada coastline. Now, those 2 incidents come right after similar ones on Monday and on Tuesday of this week, so 4 nights and 4 flybys by the Russians. Jennifer Griffin with more now from the Pentagon Live there. And what do officials make of these flights near Alaska? Start there, Jennifer.
Well, Bill, it's clear that the Russians are trying to test the response time of the U.S. Air Force. Last night, as you reported, a pair of long-range nuclear-capable Tupolev 95 Bear bombers flew near Alaska and Canada, staying in both countries' air defense zones for several hours, we're told. On April 19th, a pair of Russian spy planes flew near the Aleutian Islands in the Bering Sea, staying in the U.S. air defense zone for a few hours as well before departing. Wednesday night, the U.S. Air Force did not scramble any fighter jets or airborne warning AWACS planes, but last night, 2 F-22 stealth fighter jets were scrambled to intercept the Russian Bear bombers. The Russian jets in both incidents remained in international airspace. It's not immediately clear how close they came to the mainland Alaska, Bill.
Wow. On Syria now, Jennifer, switching over to that topic, what are we hearing from the Pentagon that we need to know about this?
Well, the attempt to take Raqqa, the ISIS capital, that is ramping up, along with pressure on the Assad regime. At a press conference in Tel Aviv, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis had a message about Assad's chemical weapons.
There can be no doubt in the international community's mind that Syria has retained chemical weapons in violation of its agreement and its statement that it had removed them all. There's no longer any doubt. The amount of it I don't want to get into right now. We don't reveal some of that detail because we don't want to reveal how we're finding out.
Meantime, Fox has learned from senior U.S. defense officials that the ISIS capital, Raqqa, has been surrounded by U.S.-backed troops. ISIS fighters cannot escape Raqqa north of the Euphrates River. There is a small corridor that civilians and others are using to leave the city in the direction of Tabqa. Fox has also learned that ISIS has essentially moved its capital to Deir el-Zor, and 2 months ago, ISIS leaders quietly began setting up the bureaucratic functions of their so-called government outside Raqqa in a town called Mayadeen, where today CENTCOM tweeted that the U.S. killed a mid-level associate of the ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. He was killed, that associate of Baghdadi was killed in a U.S. airstrike.
Wow, if that's all the case, ISIS is on the run. Thank you, Jennifer Griffin, the Pentagon there. Got some breaking news overseas right now, just coming into us right. A Navy F-18 Super Hornet pilot has ejected safely in the sea south of the Philippines. No injuries to the pilot, apparently working with the USS Carl Vinson, which at the moment is heading toward the Korean Peninsula. So I wanted to share that with you, just crossing a moment ago.
In the back of the book segment tonight, we have come to the last line of the last page of this book. As most of you know, this is the final factor. It has been an honor to sit in this chair over the years, filling in for Bill O'Reilly, and being a guest on perhaps the most influential television news program in history. But as the curtain comes down on this show, another one will be raised on a new era. That will happen on Monday. I and my sparring partners on the 5 will be relocating to the 9 p.m. hour, and Tucker Carlson will be taking over this time slot. Tucker joins me now. Tucker, congratulations on the new hour.
Thanks, Greg.
It's an exciting, unusual, and unique time. I got to ask you, what do you have coming up Monday night?
We've got a lot. I mean, look, I'm a conservative. I don't believe in change necessarily.
I hear you.
So I don't think we're going to change things too much. I'm very aware of the history of this hour, the bigness of it, the success of it, and the audience, which is the key to all of it. Yeah. So I hope I can stay true to the basics of the hour. So we're going to be skeptical, as always. I think that's the heart of journalism. You know, ask tough questions, be respectful.
Right.
I think that's okay. But, you know, force people with power to account for what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's the theme.
Are you going to get a new haircut?
Sure, I will. I did every time I change hours, I get a call saying, cut your hair.
It gets slightly shorter and more establishment.
I know.
I have to say, though, I mean, I think the toughest job at Fox is to be your booker, because their job is to set the cheese in the mousetrap. And they have to convince somebody, Tucker's going to be great, you're going to do great, and then I watch and it's like, oh my God, what just happened?
Well, bookers are the most amazing people in the world. I'm not just saying that to suck up, though I would say it to suck up because I'm afraid of them. No, but they're this amazing combination of highly aggressive, relentless,
right,
you know, honey badger-like attitude, and charming at the same time. So, I mean, I can be aggressive, I can be charming. It's hard to be both. In fact, I can't, but bookers can.
Yeah.
They're amazing people.
I just like the look you get when you're honing in on a guest. It's like a dog watching a tumbling dryer. You just kind of look and you're like, you're mesmerized, and then you shoot off a question. It's like, ooh. I got to ask you, are you going to be staying in D.C. or are you moving to New York? You doing the show from there?
Well, I hate to admit this since it is the swamp, but no, I'm staying here in Washington where I've lived my whole adult life. And, you know, a lot of things wrong with Washington. It's totally corrupt, for example, but it's an interesting place to live. And so I like that. I'm going to stay right here among people I know.
I lived in both places, and I will say with confidence that the rodents are bigger in New York. Being a small person, that matters. But you do. One more question. You do have a pretty special guest on Monday, and I mean, I think it's quite a get. And
we've got Caitlyn Jenner coming on the show on Monday, and there are a lot of ways to approach an interview with Caitlyn Jenner. I'm interested in the politics,
absolutely,
of it. And this is someone who apparently is not a conventional liberal at all. And what's it like to live in that world and have views that are not of that world?
Yeah.
So I want to find out.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great get. I can't wait to watch. I think you're going to do fantastic, and I congratulate you with your rise. It's unstoppable. Don't take my job. Please, Tucker, don't take it.
We're going to be next to each other.
I know.
Every night.
We'll have our lockers next to each other.
I'll be throwing
you
to
can
you.
stuff me in mine. All right, Tucker, thank you.
Fox News alert. This is President Trump meeting with Aya Hijazi, an Egypt American aid worker. Let's listen in.
We're not taking
No questions.
No comment on possibility of government shutdown?
I think we're in good shape. We are very happy to have Aya back home, and it's a great honor to have her in the Oval Office with her brother, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll call this one of the early successes of the Trump administration. Aya Hijazi and her husband were aid workers in Egypt. They were arrested on child abuse charges that were widely thought to be somewhat suspect. The president intervened on her behalf with the president of Egypt, and now she is free. And as you just saw there, meeting in the Oval Office with the president of the United States.
We are now learning the terror gunman who killed a police officer on the Champs-Élysées was questioned as recently as 2 months ago and was considered a risk to public safety. ISIS now taking responsibility after the gunman was killed by police in a wild shootout. President Trump and Vice President Pence saying the scene here is all too familiar.
It's a very, very terrible thing that's going on in the world today, but it looks like another terrorist attack, and what can you say? It just never ends. We have to be strong and we have to be vigilant.
This is just the latest reminder that terrorism can strike anywhere, at any time.
Also, Mr. Trump tweeting earlier today, another terrorist attack in Paris. The people of France will not take much more of this. Will have a big effect on presidential election, and tweet.
And we've got Kellyanne Conway standing by for more reaction from the White House. But first, we go live to senior foreign affairs correspondent Greg Palkot in Paris. Good morning, Craig.
Hey, Shannon. Yeah, terror hitting the streets of Paris again. They couldn't have it at a worse time. Right here at 9 o'clock last night, local time, where I'm standing on the Champs-Élysées, a man got out of a car with an AK-47 automatic rifle and then shot at and around a police van. He killed one police officer, he seriously injured 2 others, and also hit a tourist. And then he fled, and then they shot. We are told rounds and rounds of bullets flying here in the Champs-Élysées. Tourists all around. They brought him down. They killed him. The man is 39-year-old Karim Cherfi. He is French-born with a record. He, in fact, spent at least 10 years in jail for attempting to kill another police officer back in 2001. And yes, just in the past couple of months, he was in custody, threatening again police. He was on a terror watch list. The fear from police is that he had been radicalized in prison. This comes on the eve, as you noted, of the French presidential election's first round. There was, in fact, a TV debate going on exactly at the time that this attack went on. Today, we heard from anti-immigrant National Front candidate Marine Le Pen. She said the borders should be shut down. Finally, we had a chance a couple of minutes ago to talk with a couple and their 3 children from Paintsville, Kentucky. They were here for their 30th anniversary, and they were here right in the middle of it all. Take a listen.
We saw the shooter with the gun, and he started shooting bullets in the air, and the police were in the street. So it was a very terrifying moment.
Had he shot the policeman already?
We saw a man go down, okay?
You saw a man go
Yes,
down?
we did.
He did this and it went this direction. I saw him move it, and when he did that, I could see very clearly the machine gun.
That's unbelievable.
I knew it was a terrorist event. I knew it was an attack.
When the bullets started to fly, they ran and ran literally for their life. In fact, they picked up the tourist that had fallen down because she was hit, and then they were inside for 2.5 hours. They said, and I quote, God was looking after us. Absolutely. A scene of horror last night, once again, here in Paris. Back to you.
All right, Greg Palcott with the very latest from Paris. Thank you.
In the Impact segment tonight, on Thursday night, a gunman killed a police officer and wounded 3 others on one of Paris's most famous streets, forcing an early end to campaigning for France's presidential election, which was scheduled for Sunday. President Trump weighed in on the matter this morning, tweeting, "Another terrorist attack in Paris. The people of France will not take much more of this. Will have a big effect on the presidential election." But in France, where a presidential election will be held on Sunday, one of the centrist candidates seemed resigned to it, saying, quote, "This imponderable threat, this threat will be a fact of daily life in the coming years." Joining us now with the latest, Fox News Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen. So, James, I got to ask you, has there been any update in this crime? Is there a second suspect out there, or are they assuming it's just one guy?
For the moment, it seems like all of the efforts are focused on learning more about the one guy who was shot while trying to escape after he killed the police officer and shot 3 other people. And out tumbled from his body, we learned from the French authorities today, after he was shot, a note in which he had words of praise for Daesh, or ISIS as we call it here. So there's every indication this was a terrorist event, Greg.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to say. Is it something where it's likely that ISIS claims something after the fact, that he was not, they had not executed this, but they had inspired it?
Right, and that serves their propaganda purposes. And we've seen in a number of cases where ISIS has claimed credit or some sort of affinity with one of these individuals who's involved in this kind of atrocity, whether or not, in fact, really ISIS had anything directly to do with that individual. It was an interesting comment, though, that you just mentioned from Emmanuel Macron, the centrist candidate in the French presidential election, when he basically indicated that this is the new normal, that we're going to have to acclimate ourselves to these kind of events for the foreseeable future. That's not, generally speaking, a winning posture for candidates, but it does remind me of an incredibly brilliant cartoon that ran in the New Yorker right after 9/11. It showed the classic evolutionary sequence where there's like a sort of a primordial ooze and there's a fish that rises from it, and then it starts to walk on 2 legs, and then it starts to walk upright. The last panel in this sequence in the New Yorker cartoon showed a man in a suit and tie carrying a briefcase and walking through a magnetometer, as if to say this kind of thing post 9/11 is with us here to stay in some respect.
Thank you, James, for explaining an entire cartoon to our audience. But I do agree. I don't think the candidate was being, I think he was just being honest about the nature of the world. And it might hurt him. But anyway, James, thank you. Now for more analysis, Fox News contributor, Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, who joins us from Washington. So, Colonel Peters, what is your take on the terror attack in Paris, and will it have an effect on the election, and also, should it have an effect?
Well, first of all, with the statement by Macron that this is the new normal, you know, Greg, we should hammer politicians when they tell us lies, but we shouldn't hammer them when they tell the truth.
Right.
And the politicians in Europe and here who have been saying this is here and it's not going away fast are telling the truth, because the civilization of Islam in the Middle East has collapsed into barbarity, has spread to Europe, it touches us here, and it's not going to be solved for decades, if at all. So will it affect the French election? It may affect the first round. It may garner some more votes from Marine Le Pen, who is an absolute far-right nutcase.
Really?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, any American conservative who thinks Marine Le Pen, who takes loans from Vladimir Putin, praises Russia, wants out of the EU and out of NATO, is America's friend, isn't doing his or her homework. But at any rate, the bottom line is this. We have to fight terrorism every single day. I want every terrorist dead. But the reality is, unless we want to turn our societies into police states, forbid people from driving cars, forbid people from owning weapons, you're going to have these small-scale attacks because they're so easy to stage. They turn our freedoms against us, and unfortunately, there is going to be a price we have to pay.
Right, and the small-scale attacks are becoming more prevalent, perhaps because we're becoming better at stopping the larger scale
Absolutely.
ones. And so
Right.
it's a weird thing to think that, okay, maybe this is an improvement, even though it's horrible. But my worry is it only takes one, and as you see a marriage of technology to terror, and it's not going to be a car. It's going to be a drone that you could send away for, an anthrax, or it could be smallpox if the guy's a doctor. So it worries me that there is going to be an evolution towards a more devastating style of attack in the coming years that will make this stuff look kind of small.
That's important because our enemies are often ingenious. We've seen ISIS and before them Al-Qaeda do some brilliant things. I mean, the complex aerial ballet of 9/11 using our common tools against us was brilliant. So yes, we have to be prepared. At the same time, we can't live in fear.
Right.
And we have to recognize the fact that, as you said, we've gotten very good at taking down the big plots. Now the problem are the jailbird converts, the sudden converts, as this guy in Paris seems to be.
Right.
And I do remind people that I have no sympathy with terror. I want those suckers dead, dead, dead. At the same time, as far as the threat from Islamist terror goes, since 9/11, Latino gangs from Central America and Mexico have killed vastly more people on our soil, and they're terrorists too.
But the distinction is that there's one group that has an existential desire to end the planet. The gangs, they want to sell drugs, make money, but Islamic radicals, they want to take everybody to their heaven.
At first, I thought you were talking about the pharmaceutical industry, yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. I've been on this for a very long time. Those with an apocalyptic vision, as we see with ISIS and the end of times battles that's going to end now in Deir ez-Zor, it's changed a couple times. They're an incredibly committed opponent. Their great strength is their commitment to their cause, their belief, which is why, and they have no reverse gear. You can't unconvert them. What you've got to do is kill them, and we're going to have to keep on killing them for a very long time.
Yeah, and the issue which you bring up of sudden converts, it's ISIS doesn't execute, it now inspires. They're essentially like a rock band that has hundreds of tribute bands who ape their every move wherever they go. So they could just take credit for this when they weren't anywhere around. And I do think that you can be vigilant without curtailing freedoms. I don't think it's an either-or choice. Again, we become a prisoner of two ideas. You're not losing freedom. You're actually preserving freedom by heightening security, being smarter.
Sure, but, and tighten it in smart ways.
Yeah.
But as long as we've got a global left and an American left that sympathizes with the terrorists and is worried about their rights, you're just not going to make the progress because, unfortunately, some civil rights do have to be slightly impinged, such as at airports, to keep us safe. But we all just need to be sane and tough.
Right. Ralph, always informative when you're here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Greg.
The New York Times.
The question I have for you, Speaker Gingrich, is France has a huge problem with the Muslim communities assimilating with the rest of Parisian and French culture. That's a big platform from Le Pen. Do you think it will ultimately make a big impact?
I think it ultimately will everywhere in Europe, and I think in the United States. So the question is not, are you willing to accept immigration? The question is, are you willing to accept immigrants who refuse to join your country? And part of this is brought on by the Europeans themselves. They were quite comfortable putting immigrants from Morocco and Algeria and elsewhere off in these little suburban places, turning them into little isolated banlieues. And now they're discovering that that doesn't work. And I think the real debate has to be, if somebody comes to your country, do they have an obligation to integrate into your society? Or are they allowed to be off on their own? And I think that's going to be a very major debate. And I think, you talk about naming things. As I understand it, recently in a shooting in the U.S., the Associated Press refused to print that the person had said Allahu Akbar. I mean, you have this whole elite...
Instead, they printed God is great.
Yeah. I mean, you have this whole elite effort to refuse to confront how bad things are. And it's almost like they're terrified of being honest about what the problems are.
Welcome
Welcome back. We are joined now by one of our favorite people, Tucker Carlson.
Boo.
His show, Tucker Carlson Tonight, is moving to a new time Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and The 5, these folks right here, moving to 9 p.m. So we'll be primetime neighbors in just a few days. I know he's looking forward to that. We are. Hi, Tucker. Greg's going to kick us off because I was going to ask you a question, but he wants to ask you the question, so I'm going to give it to him.
Well, now you know what? I don't want to ask the question.
All right, I'm whining about it since agreement.
All right, I happen to know that you are having a very special guest on Monday that I was trying to get for a while and was turned down many times. But somehow you have some special power, Mr. Tucker Carlson. So who is this special guest that you ripped from me?
So Caitlyn Jenner's coming on Monday.
Yes.
And I'm interested in Caitlyn Jenner's politics and what it must be like to be in that position, people coming at you from both sides. And so I want to have a conversation about it.
Wait.
What does that mean, coming at you from both sides?
Because
she gets hit from the left and the right.
Yeah, well, that's right.
I was thinking about it a different way. Okay.
But Tucker, Caitlyn is a conservative, right?
That's my understanding. Yeah. I mean, I haven't. This is the first interview we've done, so I don't really know. But I've read that, and I'm interested in it, and I'm also interested in the idea that people sort of wind up spokespeople for a cause or a group, maybe against their will. And I don't know if that's the case here, but I'm going to try and find out.
I know that she has a new book out, and one of the things that apparently there's a little bit of a feud that she has with Ellen DeGeneres, and partly it was because of that very issue, the whole spokesperson thing.
Well, how would you like to be recruited involuntarily as a spokesperson for people you don't know? Can you imagine? I wouldn't like that at all.
That happens to me all the time.
We're gonna keep going here with other questions from Kimberly Guilfoyle.
Yeah, Greg, no one cares. Okay, so Tucker, I actually got a chance at the, I guess at the inauguration and the night before to talk with, Caitlyn Jenner, and big fan. Show me Fox News. I invited her to come on the 5, so you really did.
Remember she came to the book signing for the Jasper book?
I know, fantastic. But what is the main question that you want to ask her?
Oh, come on, KG, I can't tell you that.
Come on.
Come on.
It's about OJ.
It's about OJ. And by the way, it may be, and also about, a remarkable athletic career that people sort of ignore.
I've known Tucker for almost 25 years now. That answer right there, she doesn't have any idea what it's about. Hey, Tucker, let me ask you a question, though. You had the 9 o'clock hour that we're going to take over, and you had a substantial lead-in, which is very, very fortunate. The question is, are you going to guarantee us the same lead-in?
Yeah. What are you going to do?
Because a lot of our success is riding on you, buddy, which generally, when I go to the horse track, I don't take the 50-to-1 shot. But in your case, it should be about 3-to-1. You should be the favorite. What do you think?
I mean, look, I'm following someone who has been in this seat for 20 years, more than 20 years, and really successfully, really understood this business and the audience, a really hard worker, a really talented guy, to be totally honest with you. And I've been here 5 months. So I'm going to do my best, and I have a lot of things I'm interested in. I believe in skepticism above all. I think it's the main problem with the press. Not that they're too hostile to various people, but they're not skeptical enough of others or of their own views. And so, I think I would like to watch people in power get, respectful but tough questions. And
wait,
that's what we're going to provide.
Here for 5 months, and he's replaced 3 people.
Don't stand next to me.
I'm scared.
Next thing you know,
he'll be
doing 2 hours. He'll be on the 5 as well. Tucker, I wanted to ask you about your how you decide on your stories, because last night I watched the show, and I thought it was great that you had a big segment about vaccines, because that wasn't necessarily top of the news, but it is something that you're interested in. How do you come up with your decision for what you want to talk about each night?
I respond to my email. That's a big part of it. A lot of people email or text. I know a lot of people just, I'm old, had a lot of work done, but I'm older than I look. And
that's for sure.
People text me, and I've known Bobby Kennedy. I don't agree with his politics, but I think he's smart, and I think he's a brave guy who asks questions that are unpopular. I don't know what I think of vaccines. I vaccinated my kids. I mean, I'm for vaccines. But I also think it's legitimate to ask questions that nobody is. There are a lot of people who try to bully you into not asking those questions. And I just don't like that. I don't like people. It's a red flag for me when people say you're not allowed to ask that question, no matter what it's about. And, I'm a Protestant. I mean, I believe in kind of pushing on that stuff.
Wait, are you Episcopalian?
I'm not going to admit that, but I'm just saying, look.
Because you kind of make this face when you're interviewing them and they're saying kind of crazy stuff, and I call it like Episcopalian astonishment, where you go.
I am Episcopalian. I'm one of like 6 Episcopalians left, but yes, I am.
It's great.
But,
it's priceless.
but the point is, I think you ought to be allowed to ask legitimate, respectful questions, and you ought to press for an answer. That's not threatening to me, and people who are threatened by that are usually trying to hide something. It's usually people in power, and I think it's fair to make them answer the question. And that's all he was doing.
Okay, we have one more question from Eric Bolling.
Listen, very quickly, I would just love to know if Caitlyn Jenner was surprised at the reaction from either the conservatives or the liberals to her decision.
You know, I don't know, because I mean, I've had no conversation with Caitlyn Jenner at any point ever. We're doing this cold on Monday, but I mean, I'm just really struck by the criticism I read about. You know, if you identify as one sort of person, you have to adopt an entire slate of political issues. I just don't agree with that. I think it's bizarre. Every person's an individual, and you ought to treat them that way, I think.
Protecting the producers are yelling, we got to go, but I got to ask you one fast question. In 2 sentences, can you tell me why you think The Five is so successful?
Honestly, The Five is so successful because it's great to watch. Every person's cool, interesting, and smart. It's great television. I'm not exaggerating, going to watch every night. I watch every night now.
All right.
Well, thank you, buddy.
Right.
Good luck to you.
Well, make sure to tell your wife that you'll be home at 10:30 instead of 9:30. All right, stay right there. Facebook Friday.
Left-wing virtue spiral continues without apparent end. Remember sanctuary cities? Those are not enough any longer. Oakland, California's City Council just passed a resolution calling on employers to become what they're calling sanctuary workplaces, places that refuse to report potential immigration violators. Keep in mind, though, that it's illegal for companies to knowingly employ people here who are without documentation, who are illegal. So is Oakland calling for collective defiance of federal law? It seems that way. Dan Kalb is an Oakland City Councilman. He voted for the resolution, and he joins us tonight. Dan, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Tucker, for having me. Dan Kalb, thank you so much.
So I want to lead with something that just came across the wires, and I'm not even sure what to make of it, but this comes from the Senate leader in your state, California, Kevin DeLeon from Los Angeles.
Kevin DeLeon, yes.
Yeah, president of the Senate. And he said this of the statement from the Attorney General about sanctuary cities, and I'm quoting, "It has become abundantly clear that Attorney General Sessions and the Trump administration are basing their law enforcement policies on principles of white supremacy, not American values." I don't even know how to respond to that. I don't know what to think of that. Let me ask you simply, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't know the context of that statement. I'm focusing on Oakland, although many cities in the Bay Area and throughout California feel the same way we do. We want to protect people who live here and work here and who are otherwise doing their day-to-day work, day-to-day job. And so when you mentioned the workplaces, we are requesting, not requiring, that workplaces call themselves or act in effect like a sanctuary workplace.
Okay, I understand. Wait, can I skip back? This is the leader of your party in the California State Senate. I just want to ask, do you think it's legitimate to describe your opponents on this question, people who think that we ought to enforce federal immigration law, as white supremacists?
Well, you know, there are a whole range of people throughout the country who believe certain things. Some of them certainly may be white supremacists. I have no way of knowing.
He's calling the Attorney General of the United States and the President of the United States white supremacists. This is not a fringe guy. This is the head Democrat in the California State Senate, the biggest state. So it's a significant statement. Yeah. It's not something we picked off the Internet.
Yeah, I know Kevin. Yes, I know Kevin DeLeon. He's a good guy. He's trying to defend the people of our state and his district, and I support him in that effort. I'm not calling a name to anybody individually. There are people who are all over the country who have certain positions, and some of them certainly might be white supremacists.
Okay,
I think
but this kind of rhetoric
it
scares the hell out of people. It ends the conversation. It doesn't begin it. You can't have a rational conversation if people are throwing around terms like white supremacist, whatever that is. It's awful. I know that. So here's what I'm confused by. So if you're saying that employers ought to offer sanctuary to people who are working for them illegally, you're conceding that's okay, when of course it's a violation of federal law to work using fake papers, a fake Social Security number.
Yeah, we're not telling employers they should hire people who they're not allowed to hire. We're just saying that whoever is working in a place of employment, a private place of employment, that we want to make sure people who show up for their work day in and day out can do their job without the fear of being dragged out and being split up from their families. That helps nobody. It doesn't help employers, doesn't help employees, doesn't help our local economy. We're looking to make sure our economy thrives and that people who have jobs, whoever they are able to do their job without fear hanging over their head. Employees want that, employers want that, and our local economy needs that.
You know, not everybody wants that. So the Justice Department press release today came out addressing your city and cities like it, and said that officials like you, and I'm quoting now, seem more concerned with reassuring illegal immigrants than with warning MS-13 members that they were next. In other words, they're focused on protecting people here illegally and not stopping illegal aliens who are committing crimes here. Do you think that describes you?
No, it doesn't. It's not one or the other. There are such a small percentage of people who might be undocumented, who might be committing serious crimes. I mean, most people who commit crimes are not undocumented residents. They are people who have been here for a long time and here legally. We all know that. That's not up for debate. That's a reality.
But hold on.
And crime is a serious problem. No one's saying that crime isn't a serious problem in Oakland and every major city, and we want our police officers focused on responding to serious 911 calls, investigating violent crime, and reducing violent crime. And we don't want them distracted
I've heard the talking
with other
points,
things.
But you have right in front of you countervailing evidence, and it's this. ICE agents recently arrested 11 MS-13 members here illegally in the Bay Area. Now, by definition, they're part of a criminal cartel that murders people and sells children into prostitution. And they're here because nobody's enforcing the immigration laws.
Yeah,
were you sad that they were picked up by ICE?
No. No. If somebody is committing a violent crime and they're convicted of that crime, they should be dealt with harshly no matter who they are. And that has been the case not just in the current administration in D.C., but in the Obama administration as well. What I'm focusing on, well, besides my questions about housing and public safety overall, but in terms of making sure that people who are here, who are otherwise law-abiding people, are not the focus of our efforts. Our efforts need to be providing housing for people, building our local economy. If someone's committing a violent crime, no matter who they are, they should be dealt with harshly, as should be always the case.
The facts, which I'm not sure if you're aware of them, but a huge percentage of the California state prison population is here illegally. Now, I'm not arguing that illegal aliens are more likely to commit a crime than native-born Americans, but they do commit a lot of crimes. They do. In the aggregate, a lot of crimes. And MS-13 is a prime example, and yet they're not even mentioned on your website. So you got a whole public safety page on there, no mention of MS-13, and instead, you said, I'm quoting, you strongly support the creation of a comprehensive vegetative management plan to stop wildfires. Now, I think it sounds fine to me, but shouldn't you at least mention the fact that there's a real gang problem that's predicated on the presence of a lot of illegals?
I've talked with our police chief, our former police chief, numerous times, and Oakland, like many cities, have gang problems. Most of those gang problems are not regarding undocumented residents, and everybody knows that. Now, if there are examples, it absolutely is true. If there are examples, specific examples, instances, exceptions where a portion of some gang somewhere, or just an individual who is committing a violent crime and is convicted of that crime happens to be undocumented, then by all means they should be dealt with harshly just like anybody else. But the focus is that most people who are undocumented are not committing crimes other than jaywalking. And so, let's not exaggerate the reality of the situation.
That's a lie, as you know. And you just conceded it yourself. If you are here illegally and you are using a stolen Social Security number, and you are, if you're working, then you are committing a felony punishable by 5 to 10 years in prison. So, like, that's not, is that a small thing? Can I, by the way, can I use stolen identity?
Violent crimes.
Oh, so only violent crimes count?
We have serious and violent crimes in our city and many cities all over the country, probably the city you live in as well, I'm sure. And we have to focus our police force and our police efforts and our law enforcement efforts on responding to serious 911 calls, investigating murders or other serious and violent crimes, and doing the good community policing efforts. I think you would agree with that. I think we all agree with that.
So your police department in Oakland is famously rife with problems. I think you had 3 police chiefs in 8 days last year. Scandals, corruption. You're set to lose over $5 million in federal funding if you don't change these policies. Will that make Oakland safer?
We received no direct communication that any funding is at risk right now.
Well, the Attorney General just said it is.
again, we received no direct communication. If that funding is at risk, we will deal with it accordingly. I know there are lawsuits underway to prevent that from happening. I don't know what's going to happen there. All I can tell you right now is we're focusing on housing issues, on law enforcement, on public safety, and on fire prevention in the hills.
I'm sorry,
as
we're
well.
almost out of time.
I mean,
You
there
said
are many
that twice.
issues we want to focus on.
Housing issues. So people who are here illegally get free housing or subsidized housing in Oakland too?
No. I'm talking about a broader set of issues that we care about in Oakland.
But do they? Do people who are here illegally get subsidized housing, taxpayer subsidized housing in Oakland?
I'm not aware of that, but I can't say I have any. I know one way or the other.
Okay, good. I hope not. That'd be kind of crazy.
Not aware of that. I don't know. Okay. But housing overall is a big
right.
front
No, I
here.
got it.
Law enforcement, public safety. I mean, you know that. And so we're trying to make sure that. We're trying to make sure that people who have a job are able to do their job, and that employers are not. People don't get pulled out.
You said it. I'm sorry to cut you off,
families.
But I heard you, and I appreciate your coming on tonight. Thank you.
You cannot impose arbitrary and harassing restrictions on the exercise of a constitutional right. I don't happen to be available on May 2nd to pay the hundreds of thousands of dollars in rescheduled, rebooked hotel rooms, flights for me, my security, my guests. Was Vincenti Fox required to reschedule randomly when they canceled?
Ann Coulter rejecting an offer from UC Berkeley to reschedule her canceled speech for a new date, May 2nd. Conservative author says no thanks. She plans to show up on her original date, April 27th, next Thursday, despite Berkeley saying her presence could trigger violence. Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt is live from Los Angeles. All right, good morning, Jonathan. What else did Coulter have to say?
Good morning, Shannon. Well, having flat out rejected that rescheduled date, she accused UC Berkeley and the police chief there of quite literally letting liberal protesters run riot. Listen here.
I suggested two measures that actually would allow free speech to exist on Berkeley if they wanted it to. And that was one thing, to announce that any students caught engaging in violence, mayhem, or disrupting an invited speaker's speech would be expelled. And number two, to have a little talk with the Berkeley chief of police, who was allowing these Rodney King riots to go on whenever a conservative speaker speaks.
Now, Coulter and other critics claim that a planned event by Milo Yiannopoulos, the controversial conservative that was shut down in February because of protests, was the point at which UC Berkeley effectively gave the green light to these kind of protesters to shut down any conservative speaker they want to. Shannon.
All right, so what is Berkeley's position now? I mean, she says no thanks on May 2nd.
Yeah, well, officials there are saying they're doing their best. They're trying to balance two important competing issues. Listen here to the Chancellor.
As the home of the free speech movement, we fully support the right and ability of our students to host speakers of their choice. And we believe that exposing students to a diverse array of perspectives is an inherent and inseparable part of our educational mission. We also have an unwavering commitment to providing for the safety and well-being of speakers who come to campus.
College Republicans now threatening to sue the university. Shannon.
All right, it sometimes comes to that over free speech. We will stand by. Jonathan Hunt, thank you.
Time now for the Friend Zone. We invite one of our colleagues from inside the building here at Fox onto the show. And tonight, welcome one of our favorites, politics editor Chris Stirewalt. The rise of Donald Trump, of course, has attracted the media attention to the plight of rural America, but Chris spent a decade seeing that up close while working in West Virginia, where he's actually from.
Truth.
So what do you, I mean, you see this stuff, all the, the books and the monographs, and some of it's interesting and seems true, but how do you respond to that?
Yeah, there's a lot of sadness porn going on in the American journalism community right now, and people like to go to places where I grew up, like where I grew up, or in West Virginia that I covered for a long time. And it's basically they go, they read Hillbilly Elegy, which is a great book. Yeah. They go read J.D. Vance's book, and then they go out and they go to a diner in Hurricane, West Virginia. They talk to 4 people and they say, everybody's addicted to opioids, these poor, miserable people, and Trump's their fault in the narrative in each of these stories. Trump is their fault, but you should pity them because they're such benighted people. And at a certain point, you get frustrated. and you get frustrated as somebody who knows that it's always, so the truths that now the press is awakening to have been true for a long time.
Yes, that's right.
They have been true for a very long time.
Bobby Kennedy did the tour of the coal fields.
And JFK. He
Right.
came down, he brought Brinkley with him, David Brinkley with him, and they rolled over this bridge in Cabell County, West Virginia, and the slats were open on the bridge, and poverty in Appalachia. Well, I want to tell you, I was over that bridge not that many years ago, and it is still not in very good condition.
Right.
So the government, politicians, and the press have been talking about poverty in Appalachia a long time, but I think that there is an element of it, part of it is politicians of both parties tricking people and telling them, we're bringing back the coal, we're bringing back the steel, we're bringing back all these things. But another part of it is this exploitative part that the press loves to go in and wallow around and pity these poor folks and then leave, but they don't get the whole story.
And what's the whole story?
The whole story is, and Tyler Cowen, The Economist, wrote a great piece, just a plug for him. It was a great piece, his Bloomberg column, where he said, okay, there are a lot of people in West Virginia who are on opioid drugs. There are a lot of people who have dropped out of the workforce. There are a lot of people there. Let's look at the economy underneath. The economy underneath is astonishingly productive. It is amazingly good. The people who are working there are working damn hard and doing a great job.
And they're smart.
And they're smart, and they're maintaining a quality of life, and they're maintaining an income that is comparable to Japan or France. And that ain't that bad for a place that everybody in America right now says is the benighted, dismal swamp that has cursed America with this president. Give me a break.
Also, honestly, where would you rather live? Japan, France, New York City, or West Virginia? I'd rather live in West Virginia.
Tucker, if I could get them to move the government to Ohio County, West Virginia, I would be really happy. It would probably ruin Ohio County, West Virginia, but then I could live there and I could raise my kids there. Yes.
You think it's tough now. Thank you, Chris. It's great to see you.
It's good to be here.
Always.